All right, students, we're here for another class. Today, our special guest is Sean Currier. And the reason I wanted him to talk to everybody is talk about his fandom, where he got started with the brand and following Disney. He also does something incredibly cool and fascinating at Halloween, and we'll get into that a little bit later, talking about what he does with his house and creating a haunted mansion kind of walk through attraction. That it's just fascinating, and we've been going to it for probably 4 or 5 years now. And every year there's just more and more stuff added. So I got to know Sean a little bit during that time. And so I wanted him to kind of share his story and tell everybody, talk to everybody about the house. So without further ado, Sean, I will hand it over to you. Could you let everybody know kind of how you were introduced to your Disney fandom, how your Disney fandom grew to where you are today?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on. What an
Yeah,
honor.
thank you.
Twist my arm to get me to talk Disney for any of the rest of us, right? So my first memory of Disney, I was 4 years old. My mom and my family was living in Detroit. And I think looking back, my mom and dad were having issues because mom took me down to Florida, left my brothers with my dad, and we took a trip to Disney. I was 4 years old, so this is 76, 77, somewhere around in there. Shows you how old I'm getting. And I remember waiting in line at the Ticket and Transportation Center, being scared to death of Chip and Dale. In those days, the characters could walk around. You didn't need a fast pass to take a picture with them. And the face characters I was okay with. I'd take a picture with them. And that was a great trip for me. Of course, 4 or 5 years old. How much do you remember? A few years after, about 10 years after that, my folks divorced and we moved to South Florida. And then I don't know what they called them at the time, but it's the equivalent of the annual pass that we got. And so like every weekend or every other weekend, we were going to Magic Kingdom. Epcot had just opened, so that was fairly new. So it was only Magic Kingdom and Epcot at the time, but we were up there about every other weekend, and my brothers and I just knew the back of the park like the back of our hands. Um, Loved every minute of that. Like anything else, I used to live by the ocean, and it's funny how you take things for granted. I used to take the ocean for granted. My wife's from East Tennessee. She used to take the mountains for granted. I started taking Disney World for granted a little bit, because we were there every other weekend and we kind of knew it, been there, done that. As life went on, I went to college in Indiana, and it had been probably 10 or 12 years since I had been back at the park. Just life got in the way. I was a college student. I couldn't afford a ticket to go and to travel, and I was back up north again. Um, and then I got a job here in Memphis, so I do music at a church here and having a ball. And about 7 or 8 years ago, my boss said, "Hey, I want you to look into a conference for some professional development." So sure. So I started doing some research, and lo and behold, they had one at Disney World. Well, that's a no-brainer. So you get a bunch of music guys at Disney World and they expect work to happen. Come on. At that point, so I got a conference rate for a hotel room at the Contemporary, and I've always dreamed of staying at the Contemporary. And at that point, I rediscovered my love for Disney. So I would go to the conference all day. I'd skip the nighttime concerts at 4:30. I was on my own, and I'd hit the parks again, and just had an absolute ball. Totally fell in love with not only the way Disney utilizes technology, not only do they keep their parks impeccably clean, but just they're all about the guest experience, how the cast members really do make or break it. When Walt said you can build everything, I'm going to paraphrase Walt here, but you can build the greatest thing in the world, but it takes the people to make it happen. And boy, that seems to be the case. And so I totally rekindled my love and appreciation for Disney. Of course, I rode Flight of Passage for the first time. That blew me away. I'd been on Soarin', but it was like soaring on steroids and crack, uh, so the technology side of Disney just blows me away. I'm looking at things that they've got in mind for Guardians of the Galaxy, and that just looks like they're just taking it to a whole nother level. Um, One of my favorite, and as much as I enjoy technology and as much as I love the technology, I still love the classics. And Haunted Mansion, of course, is one of them. Uh, I think if people knew how they did the effects of the Haunted Mansion, they'd probably be surprised at how simple it really is. But yet it's classic, and you say Haunted Mansion Disney World, and it just brings back a flood of emotions. And I think that's true for the whole Disney brand. When you're talking about Disney, you're not just talking about a company, you're talking about lifetime experiences and emotions. And there's, for the fandom, there's an emotional connection there. It's not just a vacation, for us. It's, we're going to rekindle and relive experiences and emotions and all that kind of thing. And I think Disney has tapped into that in their fandom in such an amazing way. At least they did for me. So
Well, and when the first thing, when you talk about from the music perspective of it, I just listened to um, the most recent podcast when we're recording this of WDW Radio
mhm.
with Lou Mangello, where they're a panel is talking about the music of Epcot,
Right.
and other people in the class have talked about the experiences of music, the experiences of touch and vision, which obviously now in the parks, touch is not being able to be utilized because of going through the pandemic and the safety measures that they're taking. But we had someone on the show, Lisa Denoto Glassner, who talked about the scents
Hmm.
and how she tries to recreate those scents for people to have at their homes. And all of these senses associate us with the brand, associate us with memories. If we
Sure.
went as a kid, it makes us remember things from when we were a kid. If we, for people who've never been, it's this just, it's almost an overload of just sensory
Sure.
objects that they're able to experience. And so from the music perspective, let's talk about that first. Is there a type of, or is there a favorite music you have at the parks
Oh
with the
goodness.
lands, the attractions? Like
You know,
from a music perspective, what would you say? How do they use music
sure.
to attract people?
In the same way, it captures the emotions. Going back to the smells real quick, I always love looking at my kids' faces when we walk into Pirates of the Caribbean and they
Mhm.
smell that water. There's just a big grin on their face. You know, um, the way the composers of Disney, first of all, they're geniuses. The musicians union down there is phenomenal. Those guys immensely talented. One take and they pretty much have it. Their producers are top rate, and they know what they're going for when they record that music and when they write that music. And you know I love how, just as like you touched upon, going from land to land, there's a visual cue that, okay, we're going across this bridge and we're entering a new land now. Audio cue as well. There's an excitement of going down Main Street. There's that Americana kind of upbeat Walt optimism, if
Mhm.
you will, of the music there. When you're going through Liberty Square, and when you're approaching the Haunted Mansion, because you hear that organ and you hear that wolf howling, and even before you see it, you're approaching it. And how they are able to just weave that in. You're going from land to land, but it seems almost seamless. And
Mhm.
like you touched upon, they do that so beautifully with music. And again, I think with them, they know exactly what they're going for. They know exactly what they want the guest to feel, um, and therefore they can write that music around it, and it's just brilliant. Some of the music's ridiculously simple, some of it's kind of complex. My wife tells me to shut up and enjoy my vacation, because I'll sit there and go, oh, that was an interesting use of an augmented sixth chord right there,
Mhm.
whatever. She's like, shut up. just shut up and enjoy it. But just the way that they are able to, again, with the smells, the sights, They know what they're going for, and the music just, I've heard it said that the olfactory nerves in the nose brings up memories quicker than anything. Music is definitely an emotional medium, and they use it. It's Disney. They know what they're doing. So
Mhm.
for me, that's what I appreciate about them the most.
And on that, different people experience different things, or they focus on different things when they go to the parks. If you don't live in the area, and especially if you are not able to go very frequently, a lot of people, at least locals, will talk about, people are go, go, go. We've got to get to this ride. We've got to get to this ride. We can't stop on Main Street USA because we've got to get our picture in front of the castle. We've got to get over to Peter Pan. We've got to get over to Hunt. Those um, the attractions or the rides that people are running from
Mhm.
place to place. More recently, I have made concerted efforts to just stop and smell the roses, if you will. Just listen to different things, experience the smells, experience the visuals. One of my favorite parts of the parks is that first turn you make in on Main Street, where you're turning on to Main Street USA. You make that first turn, and that's the first time you see the castle.
Yep.
And that's that emotional response that I have, and I know a lot of people have. When you go to the parks, is there a specific when you go to the parks and you're trying to relax, is
Right.
there a specific thing that you're focused on?
So I do the parks. The pandemic has changed everything. That's for sure. Typically when I go, I really, on one hand, I miss the magic hours, the extra magic hours, and I miss the fast passes. On the other hand, pulling up the app and having, look, I'm blessed. I've been there so many times I've lost count. So I'm a lucky man. But pulling up the app and seeing, a 3.5 hour wait for a certain ride, nah, I'm good. I've been there, done that. Not worth it to me, because I've experienced those before. So that's kind of helped me take a step back and, like you said, smell the roses a little
Mhm,
bit. Because I used to, I'm one of those guys, 180 days out, I'm making my dining
mhm,
reservations. Got to go to Ohana. It's the tradition. I gotta wait. I gotta get Ohana the first night, and make my fast passes and look at who's got the magic hours and where that's the park I'm going to go to that day. I'm gonna hit Animal Kingdom on Monday because they've usually got the early magic hours, and I'm an insomniac anyway, so my fast passes can be 10, 11, and 12, and then we're
mhm,
good. The pandemic with taking that away, that's kind of forced me to step back and look at the tree of life a little more and walk a little slower. And so all that to say, I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but it depends on which park I'm at. For me, I really do love it all. And so, for me, like you said, for me to walk down the middle of Main Street and just kind of stare at the castle and look at the windows up
mhm,
on Main Street, and to really do some research and what those names actually mean. They're not random names up there on those windows. Of course, we know that. Class knows that. But for me to be able to stop and look at some of that stuff and appreciate some of that stuff. We were there in October, my family and I, and it's a funny story related to what you're talking about. We're waiting in line for the Haunted Mansion,
mhm.
and we're looking out over the boat and the river. And I said, the river is really only about 3 or 4 feet deep. They just color it to make it look deeper. And my wife looks at me and goes, "Why do you have to ruin everything?" It's like, well, sorry, I'm a vat of useless knowledge here, dear. It's just,
Well,
she was
and
fine with me pointing every other thing out, but for that one, for whatever reason, but for me to stop and look at and go, um, oh, so that's where. So I'm weird. I'm a tech guy and I'm a music guy, and so I haven't been to a concert that I've actually enjoyed in a long time. because I'll go and I'll be like, that's an interesting compression setting on the kick drum or whatever. But I'll go and oh, that's where they're hiding the projectors for that show. Or, oh, that's, you catch a little
Yeah.
glimpse. They do a good job of hiding technology, but if you're looking for it, you can kind of figure out. So I'll be like, oh, that's where they've got those lights. And oh, that's where they're putting that projector. Oh, that's how they're doing this. And again, my wife always elbows me and says, just relax and enjoy the vacation. And I try. I try.
Well, and I think that's one thing that's so impressive about Disney and helps bring people back
Mm,
is for the people who don't look at things from the technical side.
sure.
It's this experience. And it, like I said earlier, it's almost this overload of just all these different things that are happening and all the different sensory objects that are there to form memories, bring back memories. But then also, it's like someone watching a show for the first time and just enjoying the show or the season, and then going back and watching it 4 or 5 more times to try to pick up those Easter eggs.
Sure.
You can pick those up at Walt Disney World. You can pick them up at any of the parks. I mean, it's always interesting to me to tell people, and now the people that I go to the parks with, my family, they know this. But the first time you tell someone, hey, don't walk in the middle of Liberty Square. Don't
Right.
you see where the concrete is a different color. Like, don't do that. That this is what that signifies. And that it's those little things that people you don't have to pay attention to them.
Sure.
And if you don't, you're going to have an amazing time. If you are someone who that's what you want to see and that's what you want to pay attention to, or you're someone who kind of wants to see behind the scenes,
Hmm.
then it's another level for those people
Absolutely.
that you have. So people have so many different things that they can experience there that's just it's fantastic. Like
Absolutely.
I love, one of the things I've really latched on to is trying to pay attention to the transitions from the lands, but also like the use of force perspective and
Absolutely.
the use of smell.
Yeah.
I've latched onto those things, trying to to think from a fandom perspective, and as someone who researches fandom and rivalry within fandom, but someone who researches that, trying to think how all of this um, kind of adds to that experience or builds that experience for people. And it's a lot of fun. You kind
Oh,
of,
absolutely.
everybody goes in with their own lens.
Sure.
That was, so it's fantastic to know some of the things that you look for. And because I think everybody has their own things. One thing I haven't seen yet is a few years ago I read the Randy Pausch story, The Last Lecture. I don't know if you've ever read that or know the story of Randy Pausch.
Uh,
Um, he was a professor at Carnegie Mellon University, who at Carnegie Mellon they offer a last lecture series, which basically it means if you were talking to a group of students for the last time before you retired or whatever, what would you say to them? And it's not subjects related. It's kind of advice and life advice. And he gave that lecture about 3 months before he actually passed away from cancer.
oh, wow.
And so there's a book around about it. You can now watch his video on YouTube. But he was a huge Disney fan, even to the point where he tells a story of having an early encounter and being so impressed with Disney that when he received tenure at Carnegie Mellon, he took his research team on a trip there to reward everyone. Um, there is a plaque, and I haven't seen this yet. I've been told there's a plaque from Randy Pausch that sits in Fantasyland. I believe it's close to either the Mad Hatter's Tea Party or the Regal Carousel. And that's one of those things that I want to find the next time that I go. All of these things that you can look out for, again, if you're wanting to look out for those.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, just I mean, it's Disney just does such a layer of experiences and sites, and like you said, going down Liberty Square. Well, why don't you walk there?
yeah.
Going from France to England, you have to cross a bridge in Epcot,
Hmm.
and that represents the English Channel. The way that they just think about stuff like that. You're in Black Spire Outpost, and you look up and you see the cargo, and the
Hmm.
numbers on the cargo represent
Yeah.
the years that the original trilogy came out. The level of detail, I think it's for those of us who live and breathe this stuff like we do. I think we really appreciate it. It's kind of amazing. I wonder if the average park goer, even if it just totally passes them by. But the good news is, like you said, if you want to see it, if you want to check it out, there's plenty of research on it
Hmm.
that you can do online, and then look for it and really appreciate it. And again, with the pandemic and having to slow down and no fast pass, no extra magic hours, when the lines back up, there's still plenty to do and look at
Hmm.
and appreciate. Um, and for that, I really appreciate the Disney company and the Imagineering, and everybody from top to bottom on how they do stuff like that. It is just absolutely a case study on how to run a business.
Yeah. I mean, that that's how this class got started, is talking about the company in the marketing classes and the international business classes, talking how they really are um, a pillar of customer service and customer engagement. It's fantastic what they do. To transition a little bit, um, your as I mentioned when we first started, what you do at Halloween is just, it's incredible as far as the decorations you have at your house at Halloween. So first, before you get into kind of talking about what's there and what is it about the Haunted Mansion that is so attractive that made you go down this path to want to do this?
It's one of the classics. I vaguely remember a few things from that first trip I talked about when I was real young. And I vaguely remember, so in the parks that day was me, my mom, and my grandmother. And I remember us riding Haunted Mansion, and I remember how they were laughing at things, which made me laugh at things. Because, I'm 4.5, 5 years old, and I'm seeing Haunted Mansion. Most kids are a little freaked out by some of that stuff, but I think for me, even at that young age, I picked up on the eerie mood that they were trying to create with the whimsical, so that it wasn't. I mean, obviously, Disney is a little different than Universal Studios. Mickey's Not So Scary
Hmm.
Halloween Party is just like not so scary. Then you got Halloween Horror Nights up the road. But I've always been impressed with the way Disney can set a mood and keep the whimsical, and make those two things, and how they had, Yale Gracie and Mark Davis and Claude Coates and all those guys with vastly different ideas and skill sets and what they did, and make it work. That's always just impressed me from day one, even from my first visit, vaguely remembering them laughing at certain things and awing at certain things, and me laughing and awing at certain things. It was an instant classic. It still blows me away that, from what I understand, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that was. I knew Walt had some influence on building this, but I don't think it was built until after he had passed away. But just hearing the stories of, they wanted to make it a dilapidated house outside, and he said, "Well, we're going to take care of the outside. We'll let the ghosts take care of the inside." That to me, again, just classic Disney. Loved it. And then, like you mentioned, Halloween rolls around. Well, there's not a whole lot of attractions that you can. You'd have to connect a lot of dots with
Hmm.
Halloween and certain attractions. You don't have to connect too many dots between Halloween and Haunted Mansion. And so all that kind of started. I came across an effect of the singing pumpkins in our house. And so it really didn't start with Haunted Mansion. It kind of started with, I came across the effect for the singing pumpkins, and then it dawned on me, oh, this is how they do the singing bus.
Hmm.
this is how they used to do Madame Leota. They've changed that a little bit. I need to find out what kind of projectors they're using on the insides of the heads of the audio animatronics. If you know, send me a message. I need to find that out because I want some. I can't afford them, but I want them. But it dawned on me when I was lining up and setting up the singing pumpkins, how they did the singing bust and how they did Leota. So the next year I think we did Leota, and then we failed miserably. I did the singing bus, but I did them on those like styrofoam heads that you get at Hobby Lobby. It worked okay. I'm my own worst critic. It worked okay. People liked it, but I was like, we can do so much better. So I don't want to give away too many secrets, but I'm talking to a guy that does wood sculpting. Hopefully next year we'll add, because you got to have the grim grinning ghost for Haunted Mansion. That's not having them is I feel almost guilty. But the funny thing is, the singing pumpkins aren't necessarily Haunted Mansion, although I think they have them in Disneyland. I've not been out there. I think they have some singing pumpkins in Disneyland, but my family's like, whatever you do, don't get rid of the singing pumpkins. For them, it cracks me up because I'm sitting here going, this is Disney Haunted Mansion. And they're like, you could take it all away. We just want the singing pumpkins. It just makes me, come on. But it started there, and then it moved to Madame Leota. And I thought, okay, we're going to apply the same thing. And then as people started recognizing, oh, that's Disney, it dawned on me at that point, we could do a complete Haunted Mansion here. And so I think the next year we added Master Gracie, the portrait when you walk into the front room. And I think the year after that, I came across a way to do the arm. I still need to put a trowel in his hand, honestly, but the arm that's coming out of the crypt, I came across a way to build. Now we don't really have an audio animatronic, but our caretaker he's got a motor, so he swings back and forth from left to right. Still need to find a dog, but every year I thought, what can we do? Well, as Walt said, I'm going to steal to plus it. How can we plus it? It started off with the singing pumpkins and Madame Leota, and a few people came by and they liked it. But then as it grew, it was interesting in the last few years to watch kids just run up the driveway to grab the candy and run because they're in it for the candy. But to watch mom and dad stop because they know what they're looking at, they recognize what they're looking at. To me, it's so much fun. And I wonder if that's kind of what Walt experienced. Not to set everything up is fun, but when the neighbors come over and they start taking selfies and video and making their kids stand in front of something to take pictures and go, oh my goodness, and to watch them experience memories that they had going to Disney. And this is a minor caricature of the Haunted Mansion at the Magic Kingdom. Obviously, Disney's budget's a little different than mine, so it's a caricature. But at that, I love the fact that our neighbors are coming together. I got to talk to neighbors that I typically don't get a chance to talk to. And so it's great to watch kind of the neighborhood come together. It's something that's just a common love and a common appreciation. Even those who haven't been to the Magic Kingdom or the Haunted Mansion, at least they're realizing, okay, this guy didn't just buy these decorations at Walmart off the shelf, So, and two, it's kind of, internet, YouTube is a wonderful thing. I found some projection loops that we can use and have used them. And so there's always stepping back and evaluating and go, okay, next year, how can we plus it? And this year it was kind of funny. So real quick, before I get into the stretching portraits, every year my wife has been, oh, this is my husband's thing. He loves Disney. It's kind of his thing. So we did the stretching portrait this year. And she got the idea of bringing people into the garage to simulate stepping into the room, and then we had the soundtrack. And she kind of took us. So I built it. I got the paintings, all that. But as far as prepping the room and the ideas behind it, my wife kind of took over that. And it was neat to watch her go from, oh, this is my husband's thing, to she's taken ownership now too. So it's kind of cool. So
yeah,
we have fun with it.
That's really, really cool. And you talk about bringing the neighbors together. I mean, this is for a little history from our perspective. 2012 was the first time I went back to the parks in a long time. And my wife and I were dating at the time. That was her first time to go to the parks. And so we had 2 days to go to the parks, and we went at the end of October. I didn't know the crowd level at the end of October. It was so low that we actually ended up going to all 4 parks in 2 days. And I was just amazed. We walked straight on the like Pirates of the Caribbean, and it was just incredible. When we walked off of Haunted Mansion, that was one of the first rides we did. Because I think we went over to Adventureland and kind of made our way around that way. When we walked out of the Haunted Mansion, that was, my wife just said, or a girlfriend at the time said, this is completely different. That was amazing. And that, that's her favorite attraction. Or at least that's what we still talk about, being her favorite attraction. And so since then, my oldest boy has been twice. He was less than 2 the first time that he went, but he loved Haunted Mansion. My youngest son went when he was almost 3, loved Haunted Mansion. So talking about your neighbors seeing the house, we drive by, and if things are out, we're going to ride our bikes by, or we're going to walk by, or we're going to get in a car, we're going to drive by. So much so that like I know that when the weather's not good, you don't put things out, or you take things in. And my boys will ask, is the Haunted Mansion house up? It's like, well, no, it's raining. Why isn't it out? It's like, well, because there's a lot of things that can get messed up. But so it's fantastic, and it has become kind of this thing we do before, awesome. Like it's part of the bedtime routine at that time of the year when we'll walk through. And so I thank you for that. It's
that's what
awesome.
It's all about.
And
that's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about.
And I also I have a video that I'm going to that will be in this this interview, so everybody can see and hear. But also, because of what we're going through as a society with this pandemic, I also want to comment on, I know so much has changed in the parks as far as the secure, or the safety and the public safety and those protocols people are taking. But when we came up and we saw the house on Halloween, that was the first night you had the stretching room open. Right. And the way that you and your family handled everything was, completely hands off. People aren't touching things. We walk into the stretching room, and I noticed you were over toward the side kind of narrating things, and people are letting you in and out. But I just want everybody watching this or listening to this now and in the future to know that the way that you all handled everything during this time and this pandemic was incredibly safe for everybody involved as well. Something that I don't know if you picked that up from your trip in October to Walt Disney World, but it was very, very well done. Obviously, the house is always well done. This year being what it is, you all did an extremely good job with that as well.
Thanks, man. My wife is a nurse, so I definitely got some medical advice there on how to do things. But yeah, I mean, I had a friend of mine go to Disney, and he was asking me, with his family, he's asking me, how is everything? Are they scrubbing things down? I said, listen, man, nobody does it like Disney. Mm-hmm. No matter what they do, nobody does it like Disney. And to see, I mean, even I don't see those plexiglass, when you go through a queue line and they're snaking back and forth. I don't see the plexiglass going anytime soon, even when the mm-hmm. pandemic goes away, just because they will go above and beyond. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny. We were in line one time. I forget which ride it was, but the announcement came on that, it'll be a few moments. We're going to clean the rides, basically clean the vehicles. They got it done so quick, we hardly even noticed. It's just amazing at what they do. And yeah, it's kind of funny. So with what I do, I'm a little busy on Christmas. I have people in the neighborhood, by the way, they go, are you going to go this all out for Christmas? I was like, well, I do music at a church. I'm a little busy in the Christmas season. Bear with me, a little busy. But I'll never forget the time I saw the projection show in the castle the first time,
Mhm.
and a light went on. Again, I'm going to steal. I'll steal Disney's good ideas versus using my bad ones. So a couple Christmases ago, we're doing our Christmas program. We're doing Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and the entire stage was projection mapped,
Oh,
and
that is cool.
it blew. I mean, for those who don't really, music doesn't connect with them, but video does. It definitely did, and it was really cool. In fact, it's kind of funny. People are saying, "Well, can we get that permanently installed?" I was like, "Well, if you want to cut the check, I'll be more than happy to put that in." But to the point is, I'll look at the way Disney does a few things, and I'll try to apply them to what I do for a
Mhm.
living to the best I can. And then, of course, the Halloween decorations too. And I think the one thing that I've said it before, and I'll say it again, to watch my neighbors come together, and it's when they say you did a good job, yeah, of course it makes you feel good, but to see the look in the kids' faces, and to see the
Mhm.
look in mom and dad's faces, and then it never fails. A handful of times the mom and dad will look at the kids and go, do you remember this? We saw
Mhm.
this. And yeah. And that, to me, it makes it all worth it. Makes it all worth it. And it's kind of funny too. You talk about setting up everything. It's all the details that I still need to look at. Everything from spotlights on certain things. Because I think the first year I set some stuff out and I was like, this looks great, but when the sun goes down, nobody can see anything. So having spotlights and having green and purple backlights and
Mhm.
and things like that, it's amazing. It gives me a deeper appreciation what the Imagineers go through when they start building a ride and when they start building an attraction, and like you said, force perspective and sight lines. And you're standing at Epcot looking at the Morocco Pavilion, and there's a
Mhm.
reason that the Hollywood Terror is
Yep.
the color that it is, because of, I mean, who thinks like that?
Yeah.
Well, these guys do. And it's kind of interesting setting up a yard like that. You start thinking in those areas, and okay, how are people going to perceive walking up the driveway? We've got a great effect over here, but can anybody see it? Or more importantly, can they not see what we don't want them to see?
Yeah.
We don't want them to see you know, the multiple strip outlets and the
Yeah.
cables and this, that, and the other. We want to hide the magic as much as we can. So
And as people will say, they or have seen that you do a fantastic job with making people see what you want them to see. And like one of the most fascinating things to me that when I've talked to people and read about Disney is their use of color,
Mhm.
and they found a specific shade of color, and I believe it's a shade of green
It is.
that is the I forget the way that it's been explained or described as it's basically the least noticeable shade of green or shade of color that's what they paint their show buildings. So
Right.
you don't pay attention to that. And
Right.
again, those are the things that if you are someone who's going for your first time or you're someone who goes and you don't want to see that, you probably won't pay any attention to it. If you're someone who wants to go and you want to kind of see the behind the scenes and want to try to see if you can tell these different things, um, then you have those cookies, if you will, or
Sure.
you have those things that you can see. That's just so much fun. And another thing of you talked about early on, you talked about the simplicity of the haunted mansion and how it's part of that simplicity that helps it live on and helps
Absolutely.
it be so memorable and the attraction that it is. Although I have read time and time again about Pepper's ghost.
Right.
I have no idea how it works. Um, but you have a back projection of the hitchhiking ghost,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And it's when you walk, if you're walking past like the progression of the experience, you're walking from, I guess, right to left of the yard. That's the last thing that you see.
Right.
And so real quickly, and don't give away anything you don't want to, but how how do you figure out when you have something new, a new idea,
Mhm.
what's the process of figuring out how to make that work? Like, what's the research that goes into that?
That's a great question. Typically, um, typically I'll think, okay, what effect do I want to add next year? And then think, because it's kind of interesting. We're talking about coming to my house. Well, I don't have doom buggies. I don't have a track system. So it's a walkthrough. But I try as much as I can to think about in order, how does that work? Now, I'm limited. Again, the Haunted Mansion's a little bit bigger than my yard. I'm trying to get Mrs. Currier to allow people to walk through our house, maybe through the front door and around and out the garage, but that's an act of Congress. So we're in a stalemate with that right now. Um, but usually what I think is, this year, let's add, XYZ, hopefully Grim Grinning Ghost next year, hopefully maybe even the grandfather clock with the light
Hmm.
showing and the shadow hand coming across it, that kind of thing. And then I'll start to think, if you're walking up the driveway and you see the plaque hanging on your right, and then you take a few more steps up and you see Master Gracie's changing portrait, and then I didn't do the audio this year. I'm kicking myself. You see the bus in the library, and I've got the audio of our library is well stocked with priceless first editions, only ghost stories, of course. The bride is not where I'd really like her to be, but it's really only where she's going to fit because she's kind of towards the end as well. I've got for next year. I've also got a small bride that's going to hang from the tree across the way, and I'll have that
Hmm.
hurry back. So we try, and of course the stretching room's a little out of chronological order, but got to give a little license again.
Hmm.
My yard's not as big as the Haunted Mansion building, so but we try for the most part. Um, to kind of keep it in chronological. You see the
Hmm.
changing portraits, the bus, Madame Leota. Of course, the stretching room's out, but then you've got the caretaker. I really want to find a dog. I would love to dress up as the caretaker every year and have my dog on a leash. She's a good watchdog. Let's put it that way. I don't think it would be a happy experience for a lot of people. She wouldn't. I don't think you hurt a flea, but she definitely let you know she's there. So and then you've got the tombstones out there in the yard, and really what those are, it's that pink foam insulation stuff, just carved out, Dremel tooled, painted over,
Okay.
and done.
Yeah.
So very very simply done. Now there's a Madame Leota tombstone. I was walking through one of the gift shops at Animal Kingdom and I saw that, and it was like ray of light, angels singing. Buying this one because I would have loved, because I would love to have made a Madame Leota tombstone. I was just sitting here going, I experimented and failed miserably. So when I saw that one in the store, I was like, I'm going to get this one.
Yeah.
This one. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but I just start to try to think in my mind's eye, okay, I'm going through the ride. What am I seeing first? I'd love to see, maybe get some computer screens and media players and get those changing portraits, the Catwoman, the ship. You see those
Yeah.
as you go through the early on. I do have the floating candles. I still have to get a motor on those and make them float, and all that. So I just start thinking, okay, what effect needs to be added? Where does it need to go? And again, how can we plus it this year? The stretching portraits. I thought, man, there's got to be a way to do that. I'll be honest. I mean, this is going to sound very pretentious. I'm really happy the way that came out, and my wife worked just as hard as that. My wife worked just as hard on that one as I did, and it was really fun to see people come into the room, space out, and when I say space out, I'm talking pandemic space out, and experience that. And I had a whole lot of fun just over there pushing play on the recorder on the CD player, and then telling people as if I was a cast member. That'd be a
Hmm.
great job. Please step to the dead center of the driveway. It's just again part of the experience. I think next year too, we're going to look. I got to lose some weight, but get cast member costumes for my wife and I, possibly
Okay.
my daughter. My daughter hinted around about I wouldn't mind dressing up as the ghost bride. So she was out there handing out candy. So that might be the next step too, is just we're out there. we might get in character ourselves. And again, just adding to that whole experience. So I don't know
Well,
if I
and
answered your question or not, but I started.
yeah, and it's fascinating. And you know, if you're out there in character, that's kind of, you know, that's what they do at Halloween. That's what
Sure.
they do in their during their Halloween parties is, or I guess when they, you know, up until this year and maybe next year or the next when they have them again, like that's what they would do. They have people dress up. And one of the so I want to, before we do our rapid fire, I do want to focus in on the stretching room,
Mhm.
because I remember talking to you last year and you saying, wait until next year. Here's the idea. Here's what we're working on. And I spent that whole year thinking, how is this going to work? And I remember thinking, is it going to be, you know, is he going to have thin canvas that is rolled up? So then basically like somebody pulls it up, and or how is all of this going to work? And the way that it turned out was just fantastic.
Oh,
I
thanks.
mean, and the part, you know, in the video, I don't know if you probably could tell because you listened to the narration over and over that night. I cut off the video a little bit early.
Mhm.
After the scream, I cut off the video, and then I was like, oh no, and I started it up again to get
Right.
the last bit of what they're saying. And I'm so glad I did, because that part where you say step to the dead center of the driveway
Yeah.
just really kind of, you know, put the icing on top of the cake. It was fantastic. So as much as you want to, can tell about that, how did you do that? Because that is such
Let
a
me.
huge project.
Yeah, it was. It was great. I will. So let me start by saying this. All year long, I remember us having that conversation. I'm going to do the stretching portraits, and it was kind of like it was kind of reminiscent of. I want to say it was Marty Sklar telling the story about how he and Walt were standing where the contemporary was at the time, and Walt going, "You see over there, that's going to be where the castle is. You see over there, that's where going Big Thunder. You see over there, that's where Tomorrowland's going to be." Blah 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 blah. And Marty's just going, "What the heck is? All I see is swampland."
Mm-hmm.
So you and I have that conversation, and I kind of put myself in a spot where I had to deliver, because I was like, "Yeah, we're going to do the stretching portraits next year." What did I just say? So all year long, I'm not even kidding you. All year long, I was thinking, I told Cody I was going to do the stretching portraits. His kids know I'm going to do the stretching portraits. Come heck or high water, we got to do the stretching portraits. I'm in for it now. Here we go. Honestly, you'd be amazed. It's very simple. In the ride, it's actually an elevator. You know, I'm not telling the fans anything they don't know. It's actually an elevator. For us, we just built a wall, and behind that wall, I built a little structure to hang a very thin board to hang the portraits on. Of course, I ordered the portraits. I didn't paint those. My wife actually painted the wallpaper, so
Okay.
that's actually paint. And then we mounted that to a TV lift. So that's what it. So
Okay.
that's what's making it happen. There's, you know, you can build cabinets, and the TV comes up out of the cabinet, and that's what's driving that thing. So I built a wall in front, if so to speak, built a structure to hold that changing portraits, and then they just kind of the TV lift raises it up and down. So
That's
and
fantastic.
then the lights, you know, of course, lights are just real cheap lights to put it up and give the mood. And then of course, you know, we got to do we got to get a couple of gargoyles for next year to put on either side and that kind of thing. So but yeah, that's so you actually had a bigger part in that than you realized, because all year long I told myself, I told Cody I was going to do it. I got to deliver on this. So
Well, I hope.
the first time I did it, I was like, okay, something's going to fall over, because believe it or not, I mean, I can frame okay. I'm okay with 16 inches center to center stud in the house, blah 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 blah. But I kind of remind myself of Tim the Toolman Taylor when I start building stuff. So I'll never forget we did it for the first time. We had it built, and I was like, I pushed the button to make them go up, and I'm like, I almost couldn't look because I was afraid something was going to topple over or
Yeah.
break, and it wound up being okay. So and people seem to enjoy it. So
Well, and the way that the way the garage was wrapped, and people will see the way the garage was wrapped behind it, where you just had you had the black curtains up or the black screens up, really did give that feeling like I'm walking into this room,
mhm,
and then you allow yourself a little bit of creative liberty,
right.
and it's like being in there where they say there's no windows, no doors, and it's so it was so fun to see that, and it was so well done. And I hope my involvement was more fun than
Oh,
putting too
definitely.
much pressure.
Definitely, definitely. Well, it's kind of
um
funny now to the point because last year I was setting stuff up and my wife runs out to the lawn and she goes, "We made the tour of homes. We
yeah.
made the tour of homes." I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Look," and she showed me her phone and it's like, "Oh, this is still fun, but there's a little pressure
Yeah.
now."
Yeah.
It's like but
um
no, your involvement with it was totally fun, totally because I think it was BB King that said if it wasn't for deadlines, I'd get nothing done.
yeah.
So honestly, so it was kind of good for me. It's good knowing that okay, we're on the tour of homes. People are going to expect this. Told Cody I was going to have the stretching portraits. I better have them, and they better stretch. It can't be any of this. Just okay. There's the pictures. Go look at them. Could we have done that? Sure, but would it have kicked it up a notch to the experience of the kids
Yeah.
and everybody? No, we wanted them to actually kind of feel like they were in the stretching portrait room to the best of our ability. So
Well, and so I sent the video I did. I messaged John Sakari, Big Fat Panda,
oh,
because
cool.
he tells a story about the Haunted Mansion, like his connection to the Haunted Mansion, everything. And his response was like just fantastic.
Wow.
Like, so it's people people are every year. I think people just get more and more amazed that you're able to do the things that you are. One more question before we get to the rapid fire. Um, just in talking with people who come up to the house,
Mhm.
do you have a sense of, are most people local? And by local, so everybody understands, we live kind of in the corner of Tennessee. So local for us really could be Tennessee, Mississippi, parts of Mississippi, parts of even Arkansas.
Right.
Um, like, are people mostly local, or have you had people come from a pretty good distance to see this?
I think the farthest anybody traveled was like from South Haven or Oakland.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think they're mostly local, and honestly, I think even more than that. We have two or three other houses in our neighborhood that do a fantastic job for Halloween. So, if you ever find our house, I'll do a cheap little plug here. If you ever find it, you're welcome to come to the house anytime. We can get you addresses or whatever you need for next year. But also take a drive around the neighborhood because there's two or three others that do a phenomenal job as well. So our whole neighborhood just really for the most
Yeah.
part does a great job. But yeah, they're primarily local. I think I haven't picked up on any. Now I will say my mother-in-law, my wife sent my mother-in-law a video of what we had done, and they were going to come from Knoxville, but that's
Okay.
family, so
Yeah.
they don't count. They're family. But
Well,
but even with that, again, I have so much fun. They're local. I've had the chance to meet neighbors that I don't typically get the chance to talk to. Um, Again, I look at our neighborhood, I call it Epcot. We've got the lake in the middle and all these
mhm.
nationalities around, and it's just so much fun to see people come together from different walks of life and just forget about life for a while and enjoy themselves and enjoy the effects. And I really appreciate the fact that people come and take time and talk to us and look and have a good time. For
Yeah.
me, makes it all, for me, that's the drive for me to do this, to see other people get joy out of it. You know, we're talking about the stretching portraits. I'm watching you grin ear to ear, makes it
Yeah.
worth it. You know what I'm saying? That's what drives us. That's what really gets us going and excited about taking it to the next level, taking the next step. So
Yeah. And you know, you saying, I've never thought about it before. You saying the neighborhood resembling Epcot from people from all different walks of life. That's great.
and the lake in the middle.
That's such a beautiful thing. Yeah, I mean, it is. There's this nice lake in the middle. There's fountains in it. That's a lot of that. I'm gonna have to think about that a bit more. That's a good one. So
Yeah, my son was funny. He was like, "Well, if you did a pirates thing, you got a lake right there." I was like, "Oh, thanks. We got to stop at some point."
well, Sean, thank you for, first of all, thank you for the house. Thank you for the decorations. It brings our family so much joy during the time. We are big Christmas people.
Cool.
So we do, like in our playroom, we'll do like a Christmas display of Disney, and seeing your house has made me think, like, is there any way to do something outside? And there's absolutely no way because the stuff is all inside stuff.
Right.
But it's so fun to see what you've done, to see the things that you do from year to year, and just kind of those things that you add, as you said, and as Walt said, finding ways to plus it. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Oh,
The last thing that I like to do with people, especially since when this pandemic started and we started doing more one-on-one visits, is just rapid fire. So
sure.
this is something you can explain. It's something you don't have to explain at all.
Okay.
It's off the top of your head, first thing that you think of. And as I said, you talk about it as much or as little as you want. So you're at Walt Disney World.
Mhm.
Do you have a favorite resort? And by that, I mean lodging place to stay.
Uh, any of the ones around the lake, specifically though, Polynesian. Stayed at the
Okay.
Polynesian in September. Oh my goodness, Poly.
You know, the Polynesian is getting they're
It's
getting a
getting a
retheme,
Moana. Yeah, getting a
Moana retheme. So
yeah,
I'd
no,
be
it's just the
interested to see.
monorails right. The monorails right there. The beach looking over. You know, when they did the fireworks. One of my favorite restaurants happens to be Ohana.
Mm-hmm.
I need to start losing weight so I can eat there again when they open it back up. The lobby, I'm really looking forward to see what they do with the lobby and all that. The Disney Vacation Club rooms are phenomenal. You've got the mini fridge, you've got the fold down bed. Again, it's right there on the monorail loop. When the monorail's working to go to Epcot from
Mm-hmm.
there, from the TTC, you can walk. And but you know, at the same time, Contemporary and Grand Floridian are nothing to sneeze at either.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for me, I just happen to like the Poly. It seems a little more laid back
Yeah.
to me. So
So then, within Walt Disney World, favorite park?
oh, I think right now, because of Black Spire Outpost, it would have to be the studios. Nothing against, I mean, Joe Rohde and James Cameron did a phenomenal job with
Mm-hmm.
Pandora. And oh my goodness, it's kind of like Universal said, you know, we're going to put up Harry Potter, and Disney said, okay, we're going to see your Harry Potter with Pandora and
Mm-hmm.
raise you Black Spire Outpost. But you know, with Black Spire Outpost and Pandora, you know, I want to be careful. I love Disney, of course. Certain things you look at and you go, okay, when you give the Imagineers a blank check and you tell them to be as creative as they want to be, you get things like Pandora
Mm-hmm.
and Black Spire Outpost versus the Dino Land, you know, carnival.
Mm-hmm.
So right now for me, favorite park at this point in time in this season of life, Hollywood Studios is the favorite park, and Black Spire Outpost has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
So,
And we went the last time we've been, because we were supposed to go in May. Obviously that didn't happen. So the last time we went was September 2019, and it was, I think, 2 or 3 weeks after Galaxy's Edge had opened. And so
right.
walking through, and so a long time before Rise of Resistance opened, but walking through and seeing everything, I definitely want to go back and just have that experience of walking through and seeing all of these different things. And that also is another way that the company is selling the experience to people, because now you can read books about Black Spire Outpost. You can read there's a you can read a cooking book from Black Spire
Oh,
Outpost,
wow.
and all these, they build this story around it. And now, with Disney Plus and everything, and I wouldn't be surprised to see series stories, either characters like the Mandalorian or future
Sure.
content characters going to and interacting with people at Black Spire Outpost. I also wouldn't be
You know, the
surprised to see some content specifically there.
yeah, one thing I really appreciate about Black Spire is you have pre-pandemic, you had Kylo Ren and stormtroopers
Mm-hmm.
and Rey and Chewie walking around
Mm-hmm.
like old school Disney.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to get a fast pass and wait in line to get your picture with Chewie. You could interact with. He was walking around.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And for me, here we go. We go back to childhood memories and emotions that stirs up. First movie I ever went to, my dad took me to go see Star Wars. A New Hope. It's almost like I walked into Black Spire and it was almost like, "Hey, Dad, want to have catch?"
Yeah.
Just tears and emotions coming through, and because they tapped into just such an amazing thing with culture and the emotional experience that people have, and they did such a great job of not recreating Tatooine, doing
Mm-hmm.
a whole new world, but yet embracing the Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
story and theme. So it wasn't they didn't really build a museum of, okay, this is a planet that you saw. It was a new outpost, but you still had the Millennium Falcon.
Yep.
You still had the Star Wars vibe and Kylo Ren walking around, asking what you're typing on your data pad. I'm just ordering blue milk.
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing. I promise. So,
Well, and
brilliant.
it's this. When they first or when they first started talking about Galaxy's Edge, they started talking about what it was, and it's a new world, it's a new planet. It is not, as you say, a museum. I know there was a section of the fandom that thought, I want to see the Millennium Falcon, which everyone got.
Right.
Thankfully, that was my moment, walking up to the Millennium Falcon and just that is that, and obviously the one in California. Those are the only fully built Millennium Falcons. They never built a fully Millennium Falcon for the movie. So you see that, and it's amazing. Now, when we went, we walked through Galaxy's Edge first, on the way to Toy Story Land.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were close to the Millennium Falcon, about to have that panoramic view of the Millennium Falcon, a stormtrooper walked up and scared the two boys. So we kind of hurried past that. We were more focused on getting into Toy Story Land at that time. So the first view of Millennium Falcon was like, oh wow, that's really cool. When we went back later in the day, the boys really, they took it in as well. Like we went to Oga's Cantina and everything.
Oh,
But one thing you mentioned is the walk around characters.
mm-hmm.
And during the pandemic, one thing that has been happening is these character cavalcades, and I've heard amazing things about them. That
Mm-hmm.
people want them to stay. It's the old school Disneyland, old school Disney World, where it's unplanned.
Right.
People aren't waiting around, obviously for safety reasons. They can't be waiting around now in large groups, but people aren't waiting around for the parades and everything. Did you see any of the character cavalcades while you were
Yeah,
there?
they were amazing. They were amazing. Going back to all the senses, the music gets louder, it changes, it gets more, regal, if you will, depending on who. And yeah, to your point, It wasn't planned. It was just, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
It's taking a break from getting on your My Disney Experience
Hmm.
app and planning every minute of your day. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy that because I drive my family nuts. 6 months out, I'm going,
Hmm.
okay, this is where we're eating, this is where we're staying, this is where we're going. But at the same time, like you said, just to stop and smell the roses, and all of a sudden, hey, magic kind of comes out of nowhere. And it did kind of remind me of when I was a kid,
Hmm.
and it was, oh, there's Peter Pan, oh, cool, there's Mickey Mouse just right there,
Yeah.
and it kind of brought back some of those emotions of old school Disney and me being younger. And I guess it's just my feeble attempt at trying to get in touch with my inner child. I don't know. Sigmund Freud might have a better idea of what I'm trying to talk about, but they were amazing. And of course, the characters were phenomenal. The cast members that played those characters, amazing as always. And so yeah, the cavalcades are really really cool. And then coming back to Black Spire, of course you can't bump into Chewie now, but they have them up on buildings and
Hmm.
they're still interacting. So there's still, Kylo Ren will still point to a kid and ask if you're with the
Yeah.
Resistance, and stormtroopers will still, they're definitely staying in character. Chewie and Rey up there. So they're on buildings kind of looking down, but they're still able to interact with the
Yeah.
guests. And that's
Yeah.
really neat to see. So
And one quick story, and then we're gonna get back to the rapid fire. But you saying that reminded me. In 2016, we went to Hollywood Studios, and my oldest son was, as I said, he wasn't quite 2 yet. So I'm pushing him around in the stroller, and every time that we go, I'll make shirts that are something specific to Disney. So that year it was we were wearing them when we went to Hollywood Studios. So it was the Jedi logo and the Rebel logo together. And I forget I think we said our family name and squadron or something like that, because
yeah.
to kind of play off of Rogue One. So we're walking around, I'm pushing my son, and 2 stormtroopers walk up, and they stop us and start interrogating us. And I kind of knelt down, and I could see my oldest son getting scared, and immediately the people playing the stormtroopers, they notice it, they recognize it, and they stood up and they addressed me saying something like keep your head on a swivel for rebel scum, or don't do anything out of the ordinary, anything. But it was a 20-second interaction,
Yep.
because it would have been longer, but they noticed, they were so well trained to see that was not going to be a good interaction for that kid. So they go about their business, and that's something that him and I talk about today.
Oh yeah.
Remember when we got stopped by the stormtroopers, and they
Right.
thought we were doing something we shouldn't have been
So
doing?
I had a friend that was calling shows for in Hollywood Studios for Indiana Jones, Jedi Training Academy, and at the time they had American Idol.
Hmm.
There was a stint that on a cruise ship. So she's calling a show on a cruise ship, and it was kind of like Disney villains, blah blah blah. Well, one little girl was getting upset, and the family was about to leave. She got on the walkie-talkie, called back to the backstage manager and said, hey, can Hero Mickey save the day? We've got this little girl they changed the entire
Yeah.
show on the spot. Okay. No script. Okay, guys, we got to happy this up somehow.
Hmm.
And on the fly, an entire show like that. And you're going to tell me that family's not a Disney fan for life? You do
Yeah.
that stuff like that I mean, so these stormtroopers do that for your son. To do it for you is one thing. Good customer service to you as the dad is one thing, but for them to go above and beyond for your son,
Yeah.
you're gonna tell me that's not gonna make you a Disney fan? I'm about to tear up right now. So
Yeah, I know. I mean,
it's just
I
amazing.
walked away from that encounter, and I was emotional, thinking like,
Sure.
how awesome is, first of all, how awesome for the Star Wars fan in me
Right.
that we got stopped by stormtroopers.
Right.
The father in me, how awesome is it that interaction went so well when it could have gone the other way. And kudos to the cast members. Hopefully things get back to where more cast members can rejoin the company and bring the
Absolutely.
magic, because it's
Absolutely.
there's a big negative impact in the area right now. But it's just fantastic experience. So to Okay, a few more rapid fire.
Bring them on.
Um, your house is decorated like Haunted Mansion.
Mhm.
However, what's your favorite ride
Oh,
in any of the
we go
parks?
park by park with this one?
You
Or
can
no?
go park by park. That's
Okay.
fine.
I think Magic Kingdom. I'm going to cheat a little bit and do a tie. I think Magic Kingdom, as much as I love roller coasters, I love roller coasters. It's a tie between Pirates and Haunted Mansion
Yeah.
again. Kind of the classics. It brings me back to my childhood. Um, Epcot, definitely Soarin' for me. As much as I love the others, boy, man, these rapid fires are hard. Um, Hollywood Studios, Rise of the Resistance has just taken it to a whole new level.
Hmm.
They just, again, you give the Imagineers a blank check and you tell them to do your thing, and that's what you get. And I've never seen anything like it. You talk about an immersive experience with Rise of the
Hmm.
Resistance. It is unbelievable. Animal Kingdom, definitely Flight of Passage, although I got to be honest with you, to be on that safari is pretty amazing
Yeah.
too. To hear stories of like how they entice the lions to stay up on the rock by pumping air conditioning up so that
Hmm.
guests can see them more. I mean, only Disney thinks of stuff
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, you can make a case that, well, Pandora Flight of Passage is just, Soaring on steroids. Well, those are some really good steroids. Make that ride is phenomenal. And again, the whole immersive experience, the queue line, seeing the avatar in the tube and
Yeah.
just going through and looking at the sea urchin looking things that look like they're alive. It's just how in the world they do stuff like that is amazing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you said I could explain a lot. I am. I'm rambling on and on and on about 4 favorite rides, but boy, they're hard to choose sometimes.
On property. This is any of the parks, any of the hotels, resorts, Disney Springs. Do you have a favorite restaurant?
Oh, okay. Again, tie. I'm sorry. I got to do a tie. Ohana and Le Cellier.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm not a vegetarian. It's just not my thing. Uh, I think again, when it comes to that cast member customer service, I'm from Detroit. So the reason for Le Cellier, I'm from Detroit. If you've ever eaten at Le Cellier, of course, they've got cast members
Hmm.
pre-pandemic. They've got cast members from Canada. So it's amazing. I can't tell you how many times Detroit is right across the river from Windsor, Ontario. It's almost like standing in Memphis looking over at West Memphis, Arkansas.
Hmm.
And so when I was a kid, you didn't need pre 9/11, you didn't need passports. You just showed them a driver's license and away you go. So for me, talking to the Canadian cast members while I'm eating a nice steak is a whole lot of fun. And I'm a hockey fan, and typically they're hockey fans. So um, you know, to eat on a ribeye while you're talking to some guys from Canada and talking hockey, and 2 or 3 times a cast member was from Windsor, and so
Yeah.
they would come to Detroit. I'd go to Windsor and catch up on stories. So
Yeah, that's cool. And a trivia point about Le Cellier that I learned from Ron Schneider's book. He was the original walk around Dreamfinder when Epcot Center first opened. When they were building Epcot Center, Le Cellier was the cast member lunchroom. That was their cafeteria for the
what do you
people that were working on Epcot Center when it was being built.
know?
Uh, the so for me, when I go to the parks, um, I typically do quick service things. When we do like the family meals, we typically go to Disney Springs because I,
Right.
I love Disney Springs.
Oh my God.
And the restaurants on property or the restaurants at the hotels are amazing. And but we're not really at that point yet with the kids being old enough to
Right.
do a lot of that stuff. So I typically do fast service.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm a big Disney treats guy.
Oh yeah.
What's your favorite treat?
Oh goodness. You know what? I'm more of a salt guy than I am a sweet guy. For me, I'll never forget one time. I really am going to answer your question. Bear with me. Attention deficit. uh, I was waiting for the fireworks show and the parade to start on Main Street. I was up in the train station overlooking. I grabbed myself a pretzel
Mm-hmm.
and I just people watched for about half an hour before the parade started. People watched again until the fireworks started. And again, with Disney, it's so much more than just buying a pretzel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, you're eating the pretzel, looking at the castle change colors from a blue to a pink to a green, and then the parade comes, and of course I had a great vantage point there. So my daughter would tell you everything.
Yeah.
In fact, she's got a T-shirt, Snack Goals, and you're talking Dole Whip, pretzels, Mickey bars, the whole 9 yards. In fact, the reason I have 2 teenagers, so the reason we're talking beer garden and Le Cellier is I'm trying to fill those people up, and they just eat me out of house and home. So yeah, your day's coming, man. You're gonna appreciate beer garden real quick, like one day. In 10 years, 11 years. But yeah, for treats, yeah, I mean, a thing of popcorn and a pretzel, and I don't know why I can get popcorn and pretzel anywhere, but on Main Street, it just tastes better.
Yeah.
What can I tell you? What can I tell you?
That's awesome. The last time we went, I'm always a Mickey ice cream bar. And now, they sell those in the stores. So now,
Right.
and they are just as good as in the parks.
Nice.
And but the last time we went was the first time I had a Dole Whip, and I left probably having 4 or 5 of those Dole Whips before we left the park. Fantastic. So the last thing, this could be within the parks, movies, anything. But do you have a favorite Disney character?
Right now, it's Mando.
Okay.
Right now, it's Mandalorian. I think what they did with that franchise, John Favreau and all those guys, such an amazing job. Again, it's almost like it's a little bit like Black Spire in that, yeah, it's not the original trilogy and what have you, but it's the story surrounding. It goes to Tatooine, you recognize, oh my goodness, there's Mos Eisley Spaceport. So it's the quintessential Star Wars, but it's just a whole new story and take. And right now, I'm just really enjoying that. I'm glad the second season's come out because I was jonesing for some of that.
Well, and I have a theory about Star Wars. Like when I teach the class, there's 15 to 17 people in the class. I'll ask who's a Marvel fan. Almost everybody raises their hand, which I completely agree with. The MCU is just fantastic. I'll ask who's a Star Wars fan, and I'll get 2 or 3 people that raise their hands. Wow. My theory is that obviously the MCU is very contemporary with what's happening right now. And even with my fandom, I grew up, I was born a year or 2 before, or maybe the year Return of the Jedi came out. So I was always, the original trilogy, although I loved every movie. Solo is actually one of my favorite Star Wars movies. But, because the movies were so far spaced out,
right,
they stayed in the conscience, but not the contemporary. People couldn't view them the same way that they can with the MCU. Sure. It also allowed people to kind of segregate or separate into different groups. Like, I'm the original trilogy. I know I'm 1, 2, 3. I'm 7, 8, 9. Those are the ones. I think what The Mandalorian has done and what they have done on Disney Plus, I'm wondering if that is the new path for Star Wars with the younger audience, with the audience who now streams. They don't watch cable television. They're streaming on their phones, whatever. I mean, yeah, that show is amazing. I obviously watched it when it first came out. Then I went back and I watched the first season a total of 3 times. Since the first 2 episodes, chapter 9 and 10,
right,
I think I've watched at least 3 times each. And chapter 9 is amazing. I mean, talk about starting off a season with just a bang. I mean, that's the whole, the whole Western theme, and it's awesome.
Oh man, couldn't agree more. Could not agree. I binge watched the first season on a Friday night, and then like I woke up Saturday morning, got my coffee, let the dog out, and I binge watched that first season on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just too good.
It's the storytelling's awesome. I'm excited to see what they do with
Oh man.
this season. I'm excited to see what they do with the other Star Wars content. I'm very excited to see when the MCU series first start popping up. You know, what's going to happen with WandaVision. I think
Right.
some people believe it's coming out in December of this year. We'll see. I'm excited for all. I think Disney Plus is just a way to. That's a path forward for the company and for fans.
Bye-bye. Sure knows what he's doing.
So anyone, the last thing, anyone who is wanting to follow the house, wanting to follow you for updates,
sure.
How can they get in touch with you, or on social media, or follow the house?
Sure. So Facebook, we are at Haunted Mansion Halloween, and Instagram at Haunted Mansion Halloween. And if anybody wants the address, feel free to private message me, and I'll be more than happy to put it out there. I mean, we should anyway. This day and age, you know, privacy, what have you, blah 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 blah. But you know, this is for the community, and anybody wants to come. So yeah, they can find me. Facebook at Haunted Mansion Halloween, Instagram at Haunted Mansion Halloween, and that'll tell you everything you need to know. I do need to brush up the Instagram. I need to get around to putting more content on the Instagram. But and then too, I think what we're going to do next year is just make some signs, take all the pictures you want, just tag us. You know, that way you got guests, put it, you know, being able to post the pictures on there and all that. So, but that's where you can find us. Come on by, don't be a stranger.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for, as I said, thank you for the house, Sean. Thank you for doing this today. This was a great time.
Oh, thanks for having me. Again, like we talked about, I'm definitely honored because you're talking with Imagineers and Big Fat Panda, and this week we're talking to Cody's crazy neighbor. So there you
go. We're talking to the most creative house that I've seen at Halloween time. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
When hinges creak and doors change, and strange, frightening sounds echo through the hall, whenever candlelights flicker, where the air is deadly still, that is the time when ghosts are present, practicing their terror with ghoulish delight. Welcome.
Those are the busts that follow you. Look, there's Madame Leota.
And consider this dismaying observation.
All in the spirits, wherever they're at.
Which offers you this chilling challenge.
Not to go on. It's time to receive. Send us a message from somewhere beyond.
Go on in, guys. Thank you.
Can you step in?
Kindly step all the way in, please, and make room for everyone. There's no turning back now. Our tour begins here in this gallery, where you see paintings of some of our guests as they appeared in their corruptible, mortal state. Your cadaverous pallor betrays an aura of foreboding, almost as though you sense a disquieting metamorphosis. Is this haunted room actually stretching? Or is it your imagination? And consider this dismaying observation. This chamber has no windows and no doors. Which offers you this chilling challenge to find a way out.
guys remember that?
Of course, there's always my way.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Say thank you.
That's super cool.
To frighten you prematurely. The real chills come later. Now, as they say, look alive, and we'll continue our little tour.
Happy Halloween. Please step to the
Happy
dead
Halloween.
center.
Oh.
At least the town's candy is safe and shall never again disappear.
Ah, there you are. And just in time. There's a little matter I forgot to mention. Beware of hitchhiking ghosts. They have selected you to fill our quota, and they'll haunt you until you return. Now I will raise the safety bar, and a ghost will follow you home.